Stella Monroe pressed her back against the marble wall, one hand clamped over her mouth, the other trembling so hard the silver tray nearly slipped from her fingers. Behind that door, two men were calmly discussing murder. Not a stranger, not an enemy. They were plotting to kill Owen Castellano, the most feared mafia boss in Chicago, and the poison was already in his bloodstream. If she walked away, he would be dead in 3 weeks. If she stayed, she would be dead before morning. Before we go any further, please hit that subscribe button. Stay with me until the very end and drop the name of the city you're watching from in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels tonight. The grandfather clock in the East Wing struck 11, and Stella Monroe should have been in her quarters by then. She should have turned off the hallway lamps an hour ago, folded the linens, and locked the pantry the way Mrs. Halloran had drilled into her since her very first week at the Castellano estate. But Mr. Castellano had requested fresh coffee at 10:30, and Stella, being the newest maid, being the quietest, being the one nobody ever sent home early, had stayed behind. She was 23 years old. She had been working in that house for 11 months. And in those 11 months, she had learned one single commandment repeated to her on the very first day by Mrs. Halloran, the head housekeeper, a stern Irish woman with iron gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. You see nothing, Stella. You hear nothing. You know nothing. That is the only rule in this house. Break it, and God himself cannot save you. Stella had nodded. She had understood. She had kept her head down for 11 months, and she had been grateful every single day for the steady paycheck that kept her little brother Danny in the group home, where they finally took proper care of his seizures. Without this job, Danny went back to the state facility, and Stella would have scrubbed toilets with her bare hands before she let that happen. So she kept her head down. She never looked at the men who came through the front door in black suits. She never listened when voices rose behind closed doors. She never asked why the gardener had been replaced 3 times in 1 year, or why the East Wing was kept locked, or why Mr. Castellano's father had died so suddenly 18 months before she was hired. She saw nothing, she heard nothing, she knew nothing, until tonight. Stella was carrying the silver coffee service down the long hallway toward the study, her soft-soled shoes making no sound on the runner when she heard voices coming from the library. The library door was never open at this hour. It was always locked. Always. But tonight it was ajar, just a few inches. Stella slowed. She should have kept walking. She should have delivered the coffee to the study, bowed her head, and gone straight upstairs. Instead, something in the tone of the voices made her stop. It was the hush of them, the way 2 men speak when they are certain no one else in the world can hear them. Another 2 weeks, maybe 3, one voice was saying. His heart is already beginning to show the strain. By the end of the month, it will be indistinguishable from natural cardiac failure. Stella recognized that voice. Dr. Marcus Webb, Mr. Castellano's personal physician, a thin, silver-haired man who came to the house every Tuesday and Friday with his leather bag. And there will be no trace. The second voice was softer, colder. A woman's voice. Stella's blood turned to ice water. It was Victoria, Mrs. Victoria Castellano, the stepmother. None, Dr. Webb said. Digitalis in small doses over a prolonged period mimics congestive heart failure perfectly. If an autopsy is performed, and we both know Owen's people will not permit one, the levels in his system will be consistent with his prescribed medication. I wrote that prescription myself. There was a pause, a single terrible pause in which Stella Monroe forgot how to breathe. How much longer? Victoria asked. 3 weeks, perhaps 4. His body is strong, Mrs. Castellano, stronger than his father's was, but the heart can only take so much. Good, Victoria said, and her voice was like silk being drawn across a blade. Because the sooner Owen joins his father, the sooner this family finally becomes what it was meant to be. Mine. The silver tray trembled in Stella's hands. She felt the coffee pot rattle against the sugar bowl, and for one horrifying second she was certain they had heard it. She was certain the door would fly open, and she would see Victoria Castellano's beautiful poisonous face, and she would be dead before she could scream. She did not move. She could not move. Dr. Webb spoke again. There is one concern. Owen mentioned yesterday that he has felt some improvement. A trick of the mind, perhaps, but we should watch him. Any interruption in the dosing schedule could undo weeks of work. There will be no interruption, Victoria said smoothly. I bring him his medication myself every evening. I watch him swallow it. He would rather die than refuse a cup of tea from his stepmother's own hand. The fool has never once suspected me. Stella felt her knees begin to give out. She had served Victoria Castellano her morning tea just that very morning. Victoria had smiled at her that warm, motherly smile and had said, "You're a good girl, Stella. You remind me of my own daughter when she was your age." And now that same woman was in the library 3 doors down, calmly arranging the murder of her stepson. "Leave the next bottle in the usual place," Victoria said. "The blue cabinet. I'll retrieve it tomorrow morning when the staff is in the kitchen." "It will be there." "And Dr. Webb," Victoria's voice dropped lower, "if anything goes wrong, if Owen were to somehow discover what we are doing, I trust you understand that my loyalty to you has its limits." "Of course, Mrs. Castellano. I would hate for your wife to receive an unpleasant phone call, or your daughter at Northwestern. Such a bright young woman, ashamed to see her education interrupted." "There will be no problems, Mrs. Castellano, you have my word." Stella took one step backward, then another, then a third. The silver tray was shaking so violently now that she was certain the clatter would betray her, so she clutched it against her chest and turned and walked one foot in front of the other back the way she had come. She did not remember walking down the hallway. She did not remember setting the coffee service on the sideboard outside the kitchen. She did not remember climbing the back staircase to the servants' quarters, or opening the door to her small room, or sitting down on the edge of her narrow bed. She only remembered that at some point she realized she had been holding her breath for so long that her vision was beginning to gray at the edges. And when she finally inhaled, she let out one long, ragged sob and pressed both hands over her mouth so that no one would hear. She sat there in the dark for a long time. The Castellano estate had 3 doctors, 4 lawyers, a personal chef, 14 maids, 6 cooks, a chauffeur, and a private security force of 32 men. Stella Monroe was none of these things. She was a maid, a 23-year-old girl from the south side of Chicago whose mother had died of pneumonia when she was 16 and whose father had walked out when she was 9. She had a little brother who could not be left alone. She had $412 in a savings account. She had no husband, no lawyer, no allies, and no idea in the whole wide world of what she was supposed to do now. She could go to the police and tell them that she had overheard a conversation that Victoria Castellano, one of the most respected society women in Chicago, was slowly poisoning her stepson. Victoria had lunch with the mayor's wife last month. Her charity foundation had raised $3 million for the children's hospital. Who would believe a maid over a woman like that? And even if they did believe her, even if by some miracle she got the right officer at the right desk, how long would it take before word got back to Victoria? An hour, 2. How many police officers in this city were on the Castellano payroll? How many were on Victoria's no? The police were not an option. She could tell Owen Castellano himself. The idea was so absurd that she almost laughed out loud. Tell Owen Castellano, the man she had served breakfast to that morning, without ever once daring to meet his eyes. He was 36 years old. He was 6'3". He wore suits that cost more than her yearly salary, and there were rumors, whispered rumors among the staff, that he had personally ordered the killings of at least 4 rival bosses in the past 5 years. A man like that did not listen to a maid. A man like that, if she walked into his study and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Castellano, but your stepmother is poisoning you," would have her thrown out of the house before she finished the sentence. And if Victoria found out she had spoken, Stella would not live to see another sunrise. She could run. She could pack her small suitcase and walk out of this house tonight and never look back. She could take Danny out of the group home and they could disappear. Montana, Arizona, somewhere nobody would find them, with $412 and no job references, and a brother who needed medication 4 times a day. Stella put her face in her hands, and for the first time since her mother died, she cried without stopping. She cried because she was 23 years old, and she was not supposed to be making these choices. She cried because she was afraid. She cried because underneath it all, there was a small and terrible voice inside her that was saying, you could just walk away. You could pretend you never heard a thing. You could see nothing, hear nothing, know nothing. That is the rule. That is what Mrs. Halloran told you. That is what a smart girl would do. And she cried because even as that voice was speaking, she knew she was not going to listen to it. Because Owen Castellano, whatever he was, whatever crimes he had committed in his life, was being murdered in his own house by the woman he trusted most. And Stella Monroe had seen her own mother die slowly over 6 months in a charity ward, and she knew exactly what that kind of death looked like, and she knew that no human being, not even the most powerful mafia boss in Chicago, deserved to be killed that way. Not by someone who smiled at them, not by someone who pressed a pill into their palm every night and whispered, "Sleep well, my son." She sat up. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. If she could not go to the police, and she could not go to Owen, and she could not run, then she had to stop it herself. The next morning, Stella came downstairs at 5:30 the way she always did. She set the breakfast table. She pressed the linens. She carried the morning tea tray to Mrs. Castellano's sitting room just as she had done every morning for the past 11 months. "Good morning, Stella." "Good morning, Mrs. Castellano." Victoria was seated at her small writing desk, a silk dressing gown draped over her shoulders. She was 49 years old and she looked 35. Her blonde hair was swept back from her face. Her eyes were blue and clear and completely empty. "Set it there, dear. And would you do me a small favor?" "Yes, ma'am. I have a little blue bottle in the cabinet by the window. Owen's heart medication. Would you bring it to me?" Stella did not let her hand shake. She did not let her face change. 11 months in this house had taught her one useful thing at least. She knew how to make her face a blank. "Yes, ma'am." She walked to the cabinet. She opened the door. There on the second shelf was a small blue glass bottle, unlabeled, sealed with a black cap. She picked it up. She brought it to Victoria. She placed it on the writing desk. "Thank you, dear." Victoria smiled at her, that warm, motherly smile. "You know, Stella, you have such a careful way about you. It's rare in young people these days. Most of them are so careless." "Thank you, Mrs. Castellano. Owen's heart condition has gotten so much worse this past year. The doctors tell me he may not have much more time. It breaks my heart to see him suffer." "I'm very sorry, ma'am. But we do what we can for the people we love. Don't we, Stella?" "Yes, ma'am." "You may go." Stella turned. She walked out of the sitting room. She did not let her legs give out until she had reached the hallway and the door had clicked shut behind her. Then she leaned against the wall and she pressed her hand over her heart, and she felt it hammering against her ribs like a bird trying to break out of a cage. We do what we can for the people we love. The woman was a monster. Stella made it down to the kitchen and she began to wash the breakfast dishes, and her hands were steady again by the time Mrs. Halloran walked in. "You look pale, girl. Are you sick?" "No, Mrs. Halloran, I didn't sleep well." "Well, wake up. Mr. Castellano wants his study cleaned this morning, top to bottom. He has guests coming this afternoon." "Yes, Mrs. Halloran." "And Stella." "Yes, ma'am. You remember what I told you on your first day?" Stella looked up. For one terrifying moment, she thought Mrs. Halloran somehow knew, that she had seen or heard or guessed. "See nothing, hear nothing, know nothing," Stella said quietly. "That's right, girl. Whatever happens in this house, you keep your mouth shut and your eyes down. Do you understand me?" "Yes, Mrs. Halloran." The older woman stared at her for a long moment, and in those gray eyes, Stella saw something she had never seen before. Not sternness, not discipline, something closer to fear. Mrs. Halloran knew, maybe not everything, maybe not about the poison, but she knew enough to be afraid. "Good," Mrs. Halloran said. "Get to work." Owen Castellano's study was on the second floor at the end of the long hallway. Stella had cleaned it dozens of times. She knew where the books were kept. She knew where the whiskey decanter sat. She knew that the painting above the fireplace was worth more than her whole apartment building, and that the heavy leather chair behind the desk was the chair his father had died in. She did not know that as she was dusting the bookshelves that morning, Owen Castellano was going to walk in. She heard the door open behind her. She heard the footsteps. She turned because turning was what you were supposed to do when the master of the house came into a room. She kept her eyes on the floor. "Good morning, Mr. Castellano. You're the new girl." "Stella, sir." "Stella." His voice was deep, tired. He sounded older than 36. There was a chair creaking as he sat down. A pause. Then, "How long have you worked here, Stella?" 11 months, sir." 11 months. He made a small sound that might have been a laugh. "And I'm only just learning your name. My father used to say a man who doesn't know the names of the people in his house is a man who doesn't deserve the house." He was right about most things. Stella did not know what to say to this. She kept her eyes on the floor. Stella, look at me for a moment. She looked up. Owen Castellano was sitting in the leather chair behind the desk. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, with the kind of face that had been handsome once and had been worn down by something she could not name. There were shadows under his eyes. His skin had a grayish cast to it. His hands folded on the desk in front of him had a faint tremor. He was dying. She could see it now. She could see the poison working in him the way she had seen it working in her mother. He had maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4. Do you know what people say about me, Stella? No, sir. Yes, you do. Everyone knows. My staff knows. My drivers know. The girl who cleans my study knows. I'm not going to fire you for admitting it. She swallowed. They say you are a dangerous man, sir. Is that all they say? They say, she hesitated. They say that people who cross you do not live very long, sir. He smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. And yet you still come to work every day. I need the job, sir. Why? My brother is sick. He lives in a home that takes care of him. I can't afford it without this job. Owen Castellano looked at her for a long time. His dark eyes were very tired and very sad, and something in them made Stella want to cry, though she could not have said why. I have not been well lately, Stella, he said quietly. Have you noticed? Yes, sir. My stepmother takes excellent care of me. She brings me my medication every night. She sits with me. She reads to me. She has been like a mother to me since my own mother died. Stella's throat closed. Yes, sir. Do you believe her, Stella? Do you believe she is a kind woman? The question was so unexpected and so strange that Stella nearly dropped the duster. She looked up into his face, and for the first time she really saw him. Not the Mafia boss, not the feared name whispered through the hallways, but the man behind the name. A tired, dying, desperately lonely man who had been asking the wrong question for a very long time and had perhaps only now begun to suspect he had been asking it wrong. Sir, she said softly, and her voice was barely a whisper. I am only a maid. I am not supposed to have opinions about your family. I did not ask what you were supposed to have. I asked what you believe. She looked at him, and somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice that sounded almost exactly like her dead mother's said, Now, Stella, now is the moment, now or never. She opened her mouth, and the door to the study flew open, and Victoria Castellano walked in, smiling that warm, motherly smile, carrying a small silver tray with a glass of water and a single white pill. Owen, darling, it's time for your medication. Stella froze. The duster was still in her hand. Her heart was still in her throat. And Victoria Castellano was standing 3 feet away from her, holding the pill that was going to kill the man sitting behind the desk. Oh, I didn't know you had company, darling. She was just finishing up, Owen said. His voice was perfectly calm, perfectly even. But Stella saw his eyes flick toward her just for an instant, and there was something in them that told her he had not forgotten the question he had just asked. Do you believe she is a kind woman? Well then, Stella, don't let us keep you. Victoria smiled. You have other rooms to clean, I'm sure. Yes, Mrs. Castellano. Actually, Owen's voice cut through the room like a knife. Stella, before you go, would you bring me a glass of water from the kitchen cold, with ice? Stella blinked. But darling, I've brought you water already. It's right here. I want it cold, Victoria, from the kitchen. Owen, from the kitchen, please, Stella. Stella nodded. She did not trust herself to speak. She set the duster down on the shelf and walked toward the door, and every step felt like walking on a wire stretched across a canyon. As she passed Victoria, she kept her eyes on the floor. She did not look at the pill. She did not look at the woman's face. She did not breathe until she was out in the hallway with the door closed behind her. And then she ran. She ran down the hall on her soft shoes, her heart pounding, her mind screaming. He knew. He knew something. He had asked her for water for a reason. He had told her to leave for a reason. He was not going to take that pill. He was going to pretend. He was going to wait for her. She reached the kitchen. Mrs. Halloran was not there. Cook was in the pantry. Stella grabbed a glass. She filled it with ice. She filled it with water. Her hands were shaking so badly that water sloshed over the rim and onto the counter. Stella, you all right, honey? Cook's voice from the pantry. Stella forced her voice steady. Fine, Cook. Just a little warm today. Warm, it's 40 degrees outside. Kitchen's warm. Stella did not wait for an answer. She took the glass and she walked, not ran, walked back up the hallway toward the study, and every step she was praying. She did not know to whom. She only knew that if she walked in there and Owen was slumped over that desk, already dead, already gone, she would never forgive herself for the rest of her life. She reached the door. She raised her hand to knock, and from inside the study she heard Victoria laugh. A light, musical, perfectly innocent laugh. Such a dramatic boy always were. Now take it, darling. The doctor says it's very important you don't skip a dose. I'll take it with the cold water. Owen. Stella's right outside Victoria. What difference does 30 seconds make? A pause. None at all, I suppose. Stella knocked. Her knuckles barely made a sound. Come in. She pushed the door open. She carried the glass across the room, eyes down, and she set it on the desk beside Owen's right hand. She did not look at the pill which was sitting on the silver tray in front of him. She did not look at Victoria, who was standing with her arms folded, smiling that warm, motherly smile that now to Stella looked like the face of a snake about to strike. Thank you, Stella. Yes, sir. You may go. Yes, sir. She turned to leave. She was 2 steps from the door when Owen spoke again. Owen, Stella. She stopped. Sir. What was your brother's name again? It took her a second. She had not told him her brother's name. Danny, sir. Danny, that's a good name. She nodded. She did not turn around. She walked out of the study, and she closed the door behind her very gently, and she stood in the hallway with her back pressed against the wall, and she listened. Through the door, she heard the faint sound of a glass being lifted, a pill being taken, a swallow. And Stella Monroe, 23 years old, maid of the Castellano household, realized with a cold, hollow horror that she had just watched a man she was trying to save drink his own poison. She made it to the back staircase before her legs gave out. She sat down on the 3rd step from the bottom, and she pressed her forehead against her knees, and she tried to breathe. She had failed. She had had her chance. He had practically asked her, he had looked at her. He had asked her if his stepmother was a kind woman. He had practically begged her to tell him, and she had said nothing. She had said, I am only a maid. She had said, I am not supposed to have opinions. And because she had said those things, a good man, or at least a man, was going to die. No, not today. If Dr. Webb had been telling the truth, Owen had 3 weeks, maybe 4. 1 pill would not kill him today. 1 pill would not kill him tomorrow. But every pill after today, every pill that went into him at Victoria's hand was another nail in his coffin. Stella stood up. She was not going to run. She was not going to the police. She was not going to tell Owen Castellano, not yet. Not when she had no proof and no witnesses and no idea whether he would believe her or have her killed for the insult. She was going to do the only thing she could do. She was going to switch the pills. Victoria Castellano kept Owen's medication in the blue cabinet in her sitting room. Stella knew this because she had just seen it there that morning. She knew the cabinet was not locked because there had never been any reason to lock it. No one in the house would dare go into Mrs. Castellano's private rooms without permission. No one except the girl who dusted them. Stella had the schedule memorized. Victoria took her evening bath every night at 7 o'clock. She was in the bathroom for at least 40 minutes. Her maid Yvette drew the bath and then retired to the servants' hall for her own supper. Between 7 and 7:40, Victoria's sitting room was empty. That was Stella's window. She went to the pharmacy on her lunch break, not the one 3 blocks from the estate where half the staff went. A different 1-6 stops down the bus line in a neighborhood where nobody would know her face. She bought a bottle of sugar pills, harmless placebos, sold as a sleep aid, small and white, and almost exactly the same size as the pills she had seen on Owen's silver tray. Almost exactly. She spent the bus ride back, staring at the 2 pills she had laid side by side on her palm, one she had taken from the bathroom cabinet at the estate that morning, the other fresh from the pharmacy. They were close. They were not identical. The sugar pill was a hair smaller, a shade whiter. If Victoria looked closely, really looked, she would see the difference. Victoria would not look closely. Victoria was arrogant. Victoria had said it herself last night. The fool has never once suspected me. A woman like that did not examine her weapons. She trusted them. Stella was counting on that. At 7:03 that evening, Stella Monroe walked down the 2nd floor hallway with a feather duster in her hand and a bottle of sugar pills hidden inside her apron pocket. Her hands were not shaking anymore. She did not know why. Perhaps when fear gets large enough, it stops feeling like fear and starts feeling like something else. Purpose, maybe, or madness. She reached the door of Victoria's sitting room. She listened, water running, the faint sound of humming from the bathroom beyond. Stella pushed the door open. She stepped inside. She closed it behind her. She was in. The blue cabinet stood against the far wall just as she remembered. She crossed the room in 4 long strides. She opened it. There on the second shelf was a small blue bottle. She lifted it. She unscrewed the cap. Inside, 23 small white pills. 23 doses of digitalis waiting in a row. Stella took the sugar pills out of her pocket. She counted them into her hand. 23. She had bought extra. She poured the poison pills into a folded handkerchief and slipped the handkerchief into her apron pocket. She poured the sugar pills into the blue bottle. She screwed the cap back on. She set the bottle back on the shelf in the exact spot she had found it, with the label turned the exact direction it had been. From the bathroom, the humming stopped. Stella's heart stopped with it. She held her breath. She waited. The humming started again. Victoria had only paused to turn off the tap. Stella closed the cabinet. She walked back across the room. She opened the door. She stepped into the hallway. She closed the door behind her. She had been inside for exactly 41 seconds. She walked down the hallway on legs that felt like water, and she did not let herself cry until she was back in her room with the door locked behind her, and then she sat on the edge of her bed with 23 pills of poison in her handkerchief, and she cried silently into her hands for a very long time, because now there was no going back. The first night, Victoria brought Owen his pill at 9 o'clock. Stella knew because she was dusting the banister on the landing above, pretending to be invisible, watching through the railings as Victoria carried the silver tray down the corridor. Stella did not breathe. She watched the door close. She waited. 8 minutes. The door opened. Victoria came out. She was smiling. "Good night, darling," she called over her shoulder. "Sleep well." Stella gripped the banister to keep her knees from giving out. He had taken it. He had taken the sugar pill. And Victoria had not noticed the difference. It had worked. For one single dose, it had worked. The second night went the same way, and the third, and the fourth. By the end of the first week, Stella was sleeping 2 hours a night. She woke at every sound in the hallway. She jumped when doors closed. She was washing dishes in the kitchen one afternoon when Mrs. Halloran laid a hand on her shoulder and Stella shrieked, and every maid in the kitchen turned to stare at her. "Girl, what is the matter with you?" "Nothing, Mrs. Halloran, I'm sorry." "You've been pale as milk for a week. Are you sick?" "Do I need to send for a doctor?" "No, ma'am, please." "Then pull yourself together." "Do you hear me? Whatever's troubling you, leave it at the door." "Yes, Mrs. Halloran." The older woman looked at her for a long moment, that same look from before. Not sternness, fear. "Girl," she said low enough that no one else would hear, "I don't know what you've gotten yourself into, and I don't want to know, but I will tell you this. Whatever you're doing, stop, before it's too late. Do you hear me?" Stella looked up. Her eyes were burning. "It's already too late, Mrs. Halloran." The older woman's mouth tightened. She gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. And then she turned and walked away, and she did not speak to Stella again for the rest of the day. On the 9th morning, everything changed. Stella was carrying a tray of tea into the sunroom when she heard voices from the hallway. Owen's voice, low and rough. "Feel different, Marcus. I'm telling you, something is different." Dr. Webb's voice. "Owen, these fluctuations are normal. The heart is an unpredictable organ. You may have good days and bad days. This is more than a good day. I slept through the night. Do you understand what I'm saying? For the first time in 6 months, I slept through the entire night without waking. That is encouraging. Encouraging, Marcus. Yesterday, I walked up the stairs in this house without stopping. 2 weeks ago, I couldn't make it to the second landing without feeling like my chest was going to crack open. Owen, my hands aren't shaking. Look at them. Look." A pause, a long one. "Perhaps," Dr. Webb said, and his voice was strained, "perhaps the medication is finally stabilizing your condition." "Perhaps," another pause. "I'd like to run some tests, Owen, just to be sure. A full blood panel." "Do it, today." "Today." "Now, Marcus, draw the blood now and take it to the lab yourself. I want the results by tomorrow morning." "Owen, the lab doesn't work that fast." "I own the lab, Marcus." Stella felt the tray tilt in her hands. She caught it. She walked into the sunroom like nothing was wrong, set the tea down, and walked back out the servant's door without being seen. In the hallway, her knees nearly went out from under her. Owen knew, or he was beginning to know. He had not asked those questions idly that first morning in the study. He had been watching. He had been waiting. He had been testing. And now he was going to run a blood panel. A blood panel would show that there was no digitalis in his system, which meant Dr. Webb was about to be caught, which meant Dr. Webb was about to panic, which meant Dr. Webb was about to run straight to Victoria. Stella did not finish her morning rounds. She did not care. She walked straight out the back door of the kitchen and around the side of the house toward the security station by the front gate. There was a man there she had been watching for a week, trying to decide if she could trust him. She had not decided. She was out of time. Dom Santoro was the head of Owen's personal security detail. He was 50 years old, built like a barrel with a shaved head and a thick Sicilian accent. He had worked for the Castellano family since he was 19. He had served Owen's father before he had served Owen. The staff said he would take a bullet for the family without hesitating. The staff also said he was a man who did not ask questions he did not want the answers to. Stella reached the security station. Dom was inside reading a newspaper. He looked up when she knocked on the glass. "You're the maid." "Yes, sir." "What do you want?" Stella looked over her shoulder. Nobody in the driveway, nobody at the windows, but somebody could come out at any moment. "Mr. Santoro?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "I need to speak to you in private. Now, please." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he folded the newspaper. He stood up. He opened the door of the security station. "Come in. Close the door behind you." She did, and the moment she did, he looked at her with eyes that were suddenly not sleepy anymore, suddenly not bored anymore, and he said very quietly, "Girl, whatever you are about to tell me, you had better be sure, because once you say it, you cannot unsay it. And if you are lying or if you are wrong, I will make you wish you had never walked into this house. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir." "Then say it." Stella took a breath. She reached into her apron pocket. She pulled out the handkerchief folded tight around 23 small white pills. She opened it on the table between them. "Mr. Santoro," she said, and her voice did not shake. "These are the pills that Mrs. Castellano has been giving Mr. Owen every night for the last month. I have been replacing them with sugar pills. I replaced them because 9 days ago I heard Mrs. Castellano tell Dr. Webb that these pills are poison. Digitalis. She said Mr. Owen would be dead in 3 weeks. She said it would look like a heart attack. She said no one would ever know." Dom Santoro did not move. He did not breathe. His eyes went from her face to the pills and back to her face. "Girl," he said, and his voice was so low and so dangerous that it made every hair on Stella's arm stand up. "Do you have any idea what you are saying?" "Yes, sir." "Do you know what happens if you are lying to me?" "Yes, sir." "Are you lying to me?" "No, sir." Dom Santoro looked at the pills for a very, very long time. Then he picked up the phone on the desk. He dialed 3 numbers. Someone answered. "Tony, it's Dom. I need a private favor. A lab test. Digitalis, 1 hour. No paperwork, no names, no questions." He listened. "Yes, I'll bring it myself." He hung up. He picked up one of the pills between his finger and thumb. He looked at Stella. "If you are telling the truth, girl, I am going to owe you my life, because I have served Mr. Owen since he was a boy, and if anything happened to him on my watch, I would not be able to live with myself." "Yes, sir." "And if you are lying," he looked at her, "I think you know." "Yes, sir, I know." He nodded once. "Go back to the house. Do your work. Do not speak to anyone. Do not look at anyone. Do not act any differently than you have been acting. I will come find you tonight after supper. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mr. Santoro." "And girl?" "Yes, sir. If Victoria Castellano so much as suspects that you know she will not wait for the pills to finish you, she will kill you with her non-yuan. Do you understand that too?" "Yes, sir." "Then go." Stella walked back to the house. She walked into the kitchen. She picked up her tray. She carried it up the stairs, and as she passed the open door of Victoria Castellano's sitting room, Victoria looked up from her writing desk and smiled. "Stella, darling. Come here a moment, would you?" Stella stopped. She turned. She stepped into the sitting room. "Yes, Mrs. Castellano." Victoria was holding something in her right hand. Stella looked down. It was the small blue bottle from the cabinet. Tell me something, dear. Victoria's voice was as warm and musical as it had ever been. Have you been in my sitting room when I was not here? Stella Monroe felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. She did not let it show on her face. She did not let her eyes drop to the bottle. She did not let her hands clench at her sides. 11 months in this house had taught her one thing, and 11 months of terror in the last 10 days had sharpened it to a razor's edge. I'm sorry, Mrs. Castellano. What do you mean? Victoria tilted her head. That warm, motherly smile was still on her face, but something about it had shifted. Something about it was now the smile of a cat that had cornered a mouse and was not yet in a hurry to kill it. This bottle, dear, Owen's medication. I keep it right here in the blue cabinet. And this morning when I took it out, I could have sworn it looked disturbed, as if someone had moved it. I don't understand, ma'am. You clean this room, don't you, Stella? Yes, ma'am. Every Tuesday and Friday. Today is Thursday. Yes, ma'am. So you were not in here yesterday? No, ma'am. And you have not been in here today? Stella looked her dead in the eye. No, Mrs. Castellano, I have not. The lie came out clean. It came out level. It came out without a single tremor in her voice. And as it left her lips, Stella realized something about herself that she had not known before that moment. Stella Monroe could lie to a murderer. Stella Monroe could look a killer in the face and lie without blinking. Victoria watched her for a long moment. Then slowly she set the bottle down on the writing desk. I must be imagining things. Old age, perhaps? You are not old, Mrs. Castellano. Aren't I? Victoria laughed. The sound was light and silvery. Well, perhaps I am simply tired. Caring for Owen these past months has taken more out of me than I care to admit. He is lucky to have you, ma'am. Yes. Victoria's eyes did not leave hers. He is, isn't he? You may go, Stella. Yes, Mrs. Castellano. Stella turned. She walked out of the sitting room. She did not run. She did not rush. She walked with the same steady, silent pace she had used 1,000 times in this house, and she did not let out the breath she was holding until she was all the way down the hallway and around the corner and safely out of Victoria's sight. Then she pressed her back against the wall, and she slid down to the floor, and she put her hand over her mouth, and she did not let herself make a single sound. Victoria knew. Not everything. Not yet. But she suspected. And Victoria Castellano did not suspect. Victoria Castellano confirmed. If she had even a whisper of doubt, she would find the truth before the day was out. Stella had to find Dom. She had to find him now. She found him in the garage under the hood of Owen's Lincoln, pretending to check the oil. Mr. Santoro, keep walking, girl. Don't stop. She kept walking. She turned at the end of the row of cars and came back from the other side, her duster in her hand, pretending to clean the chrome of a Cadillac parked 6 feet from him. She suspects me. The silence that followed lasted exactly 2 seconds. When Dom spoke, his voice was low and flat. Tell me. She noticed the bottle had been moved. She asked me if I had been in her sitting room. I said no. She says she believes me. She doesn't. How do you know she doesn't? I just know. Dom was silent. He wiped his hands on a rag. He did not look at her. The lab called back 40 minutes ago. Every pill you gave me came back positive. Digitalis, high concentration, enough to kill a grown man in 10 to 15 doses. Stella closed her eyes. So it's true. It was always true, girl. You knew it was true. The lab just agreed with you. Mr. Santoro, what do? We move tonight. We can't wait. If she suspects you, she'll test the pills. If she tests the pills, she'll know the game is up, and the first thing she does is clean the house. That means you, me, Dr. Webb, and anyone who knows a single word of this. She has people, girl. She has been building her own crew inside this house for 2 years. I've seen it. I've watched it happen, and I did not know what I was watching. Owen. Owen is at the doctor's office across town. Blood panel. He'll be back at 4. Until then, you do not go near Victoria. You do not go into her rooms. You do not look at her. You work in the kitchen. You stay with Cook. If Victoria asks for you, you say Mrs. Halloran has you scrubbing pots. Do you hear me? Yes, sir. When Owen comes home, I will take him to the security station. I will show him the lab results. I will bring you in. You will tell him everything you heard exactly the way you heard it. Do you understand? Yes, sir. And Stella? Yes. If something goes wrong, if Victoria moves before we do, you run. You do not fight her. You do not try to save anyone. You run out of this house and you do not stop running until you are in another state. Are you hearing me? I can't. My brother. Your brother will be alive in a week if you are. He will not be alive in a week if you are not. Stella swallowed. She nodded. Yes, Mr. Santoro. Go. She went. Osham. She made it to the kitchen. She put on an apron. She picked up the biggest stock pot Cook had dirtied that morning, and she plunged her arms into soapy water up to her elbows, and she scrubbed. Cook looked at her sideways. You feeling all right, honey? Fine, Cook. Your hands are shaking. It's cold in here. It's not cold in here. What's the matter with you? Nothing, Cook. Please, I just want to work. Cook was a big woman, 62 years old, with arms like hams and a face like a pot roast. She had been in this house for 31 years. She set down her wooden spoon and she walked over to Stella and she looked down at her with eyes that had seen a great many things in a great many years. Girl, you got yourself in some trouble. No, Cook. You telling me the truth? Yes, Cook. Cook studied her for a long moment. You know what my mama always said to me back in Alabama when I was a little girl? She said, baby, the devil don't come for you with horns and a tail. He come for you with a pretty smile carrying a cup of tea. You remember that, you hear me? Stella looked up. Cook's eyes were steady. Steady and old and knowing. Yes, Cook. Good. Now finish those pots and then I want you chopping onions. Lots of onions. Nobody wonders why a girl is crying when she's chopping onions. Stella let out a breath that was half a laugh and half a sob. Yes, Cook. At 3:54, the front gate buzzer sounded. Stella heard it from the kitchen. At 3:57, she heard the sound of the front door opening. At 4:01, she heard Owen Castellano's voice in the foyer speaking to someone. At 4:02, she heard him ask for Dom. And at 4:03, Stella heard something she had not expected. She heard Victoria's voice. Owen, darling, you're home. How did the doctor's visit go? Fine. Marcus ran your tests. Yes. And the results tomorrow morning. A pause. Stella gripped the edge of the sink. Cook went very still beside her. Darling, Victoria said, and her voice was like warm honey. Come sit with me a moment. I have something I need to tell you. Can it wait? I need to speak with Dom. No, Owen, it cannot wait. I have just had the most upsetting conversation. I think one of the maids has been stealing from me. Stella's breath stopped in her chest. Stealing what? I'd rather discuss it privately, darling. Come into the sitting room. Stella's hand went to the edge of the counter. Cook's hand went to Stella's arm. It was a grip like a vice. Don't you move, girl, Cook hissed. Don't you make a sound. Cook, hush. In the foyer, Owen's footsteps, moving toward the sitting room. Stella heard the sitting room door close, and Stella Monroe understood with a clarity that felt like a knife sliding between her ribs what was about to happen. Victoria had not gone to her own crew. Victoria had not tested the pills. Victoria was not going to clean house. Victoria was going to tell Owen first. Victoria was going to accuse Stella of theft, of tampering, of meddling. She was going to frame her as a thief and have her dismissed or worse turned over to the police on trumped-up charges before Stella ever had the chance to say a word. And the worst of it, the thing that made Stella's blood go cold all the way down to her feet was this: it would work, because Owen Castellano had known Victoria for 20 years. Owen Castellano had known Stella for 11 months. He had spoken to her exactly once. He had no reason on earth to trust a maid over the woman his own father had married. Victoria had turned the knife around, and Stella had walked right into it. Cook, Stella's voice was a whisper. I have to get to Dom. No. Cook, please. You go out that door right now, and Mrs. Castellano sees you running, and everything you have been trying to do is done. Is that what you want? She's going to... I know what she's going to do. Hush. Let me think. Stella pressed her forehead against the edge of the sink. Her hands were shaking so hard she had to set them flat against the counter. Cook moved to the kitchen door. She opened it a crack. She listened. Then she turned back. Stella, listen to me. There is a service staircase behind the pantry. It goes up to the second floor. There is a door at the top that opens into the back of the linen closet in the east wing. From the linen closet, you can get into the corridor outside the sitting room. You can hear what they are saying through the wall if you put your ear against the panel. Cook, I have worked in this house for 31 years, girl. You think you are the first person who ever needed to hear a conversation they weren't supposed to hear. Stella stared at her. You go up there, you listen, you do not move, you do not breathe. And when you hear Mr. Owen's voice leave that room, you come straight back down here. Do you hear me? Yes, Cook. Go. The service staircase was dark and narrow and smelled of old dust. Stella climbed it on the balls of her feet. She reached the top. She eased the door open. The linen closet was empty. She stepped through across the folded sheets and through the closet's other door and into the back corridor of the east wing. The sitting room was 3 doors down. She crept to the wall beside it. She pressed her ear to the wood panel. Victoria's voice muffled but clear. I cannot believe it either, darling. I had no idea, but the signs have been there, the way she watches me, the way she comes into my rooms when she thinks I'm not looking. I caught her this morning, Owen. I caught her in my sitting room holding your medication in her hand. Stella's heart slammed against her ribs. Owen's voice, low. Which maid, Victoria? The new one, Stella Monroe, the girl who has been cleaning your study. A pause, a very long pause. And then finally, Owen's voice again. Quiet. What was she doing with my medication? That is what I was trying to understand, darling. She said she was dusting, but I had seen her in there an hour earlier dusting. I asked her quite gently, and she lied to me. She looked me in the face, Owen, and she lied to me. About what? About being in the room at all. She denied it. She said she had not set foot in my rooms all day. But I had seen her, Owen. I had seen her with my own eyes. Another pause. That is a serious accusation, Victoria. No, darling. That is why I wanted to speak with you first before I said anything to Mrs. Halloran or to Dom. I wanted you to hear it from me. I wanted us to decide together what to do. What do you think should be done? I think the girl should be dismissed today, tonight. I don't want her in this house another night. And Owen, I hate to say this, I think we should have Dom check into her. Her background, who she is, who hired her. Because if she has been tampering with your medication, if God forbid she has been putting anything into it. Victoria. Owen's voice had changed. It was very, very quiet now. Why would a maid tamper with my medication? I don't know, darling. But there are people in this city who would pay a great deal of money to have a girl inside this house doing exactly that. You know there are. You have enemies. And a young girl with a sick brother with no money, she is exactly the kind of girl they would recruit. Stella felt the floor sway beneath her. She knew about Danny. How? How did she know? Because of course she knew. Because Victoria Castellano did not hire a maid without knowing everything about her. Because every word Stella had said in this house, every detail she had let slip, had been filed away in that woman's beautiful, terrible mind and was now being turned into a weapon against her. I want to speak to the girl. Owen. Now Victoria. I want her in this room now. Darling, please, let Dom handle it. Let him question her. It is not safe for you. I said now. Stella heard footsteps. She did not wait to hear more. She turned and ran silently on the balls of her feet, back through the linen closet, back down the service stairs, through the pantry into the kitchen where Cook was standing at the sink with her back to the door. Stella? He wants to see me. Oh, Lord. Cook, is Dom in the house? I don't know, child. I haven't seen him. The kitchen door swung open. Mrs. Halloran stood in the doorway. Stella, Mr. Castellano wants you in the sitting room, immediately. Yes, Mrs. Halloran. The head housekeeper looked at her. In the older woman's eyes, for one flickering instant, Stella saw it again. That fear, that same fear she had seen before, but there was something else in it now, something new. Pity. Child, Mrs. Halloran said, and her voice was almost gentle. Whatever you have done, you tell the truth. Do you hear me? Mr. Owen is not Mrs. Castellano. Mr. Owen respects the truth even when it costs him. Do you hear me, girl? Stella nodded. She walked out of the kitchen. She walked down the hallway. She reached the sitting room door. She raised her hand to knock. Her whole life came down to this moment. If Dom was not in the house, if he could not get to Owen before Victoria did, If Owen believed his stepmother over a maid he had spoken to exactly once, Stella was going to be put out onto the street in an hour. And she would not make it through the night, because Victoria Castellano, once she had her name and her address and her brother's address at the group home, would send people. And Danny would die too. Stella closed her eyes. She took one breath. She thought of her mother dying in that charity ward with no one at her side but Stella herself. She thought of the promise she had made kneeling by that hospital bed, that she would take care of Danny no matter what. She thought of her own voice that morning, saying to Owen Castellano, "They say people who cross you do not live very long, sir." She opened her eyes. She knocked. "Come in," she stepped inside. Oh, Victoria was sitting on the velvet sofa, a handkerchief pressed to the corner of her eye. Owen was standing by the window, his back to the door, one hand in the pocket of his trousers. "Stella." He did not turn around. "Close the door." "Yes, sir." She closed it. "Victoria tells me you were in her sitting room this morning, handling my medication. Is that true?" Stella opened her mouth. And before she could speak, she heard something that stopped her cold. A voice. Another voice in the room, a man's voice. Low, calm, and coming from the corner behind her. "Before she answers, Mr. Castellano, there is something you ought to see." Dom Santoro stepped out of the auto of the bookcase. In his right hand, he held a folded sheet of paper. In his left hand, he held the small blue bottle. Victoria Castellano's face drained of color so fast that for one moment she looked like a corpse already. "Owen." "Quiet, Victoria." Owen turned. Slowly. He looked at Dom. He looked at the paper. He looked at the bottle. He looked at Stella. "What is this?" "This, Mr. Castellano," Dom said, "is a laboratory report from Costa Pharmaceutical dated this afternoon. It is the chemical analysis of 23 pills that were delivered to me this morning by this young woman. And every one of them is digitalis, sir. Enough to kill you inside of 3 weeks. The same as every pill your stepmother has been bringing you every night for the last 4 weeks." The silence that followed was the loudest silence Stella had ever heard in her life. Owen Castellano did not move. He did not speak. He looked at Dom. He looked at the report. He looked at the bottle, and then very slowly he turned his head and he looked at Victoria. "Owen," Victoria whispered, "darling, whatever he has told you, whatever that girl has told you, I swear to you on your father's grave. Don't." His voice was barely a whisper. "Don't you dare say his name." Victoria stood up. Her handkerchief fell to the floor. Her face was white, but her eyes were moving fast, calculating, measuring the distance to the door, to the window, to the bell pull on the wall. "Owen, please, listen to me. That man has been lying to you for years. He works for the Falcones. He has been waiting for a chance to turn you against me." "Dom." "Yes, Mr. Castellano." "Lock the door." Dom walked to the door. He turned the key in the lock. He put the key in his pocket. Owen Castellano walked across the room. He stopped in front of his stepmother. And for the first time in her life, Stella watched a woman who was smaller than she had ever been a moment before, cornered and terrified, and trying not to show it, look up into the face of a man she had tried to murder. "Sit down, Victoria." "Owen." "Sit down." Victoria sat down. Owen turned. He looked at Stella. And for the first time since she had walked into the room, he really looked at her. His eyes moved across her face like a man trying to memorize something. "Stella Monroe." "Yes, sir." "Why, sir, Papa? Why did you do this? Why did you risk your life for a man you don't know?" Stella looked at him. She thought of 100 answers. She thought of telling him about her mother, about her brother, about the voice in her head that had told her she could not live with herself if she walked away. She thought of saying something eloquent, something worthy of the moment. In the end, what came out was the simplest thing. "Because I heard her, sir. And once you hear a thing like that, you cannot unhear it. And once you know, you cannot not know. And I did not want to be the kind of person who knew and did nothing." Owen Castellano looked at her for a very long time. Then he turned back to his stepmother. And his voice when he spoke was the softest and most terrible thing Stella had ever heard. "Victoria, I am going to ask you one question, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer, because your answer is going to decide what happens to you next. Do you understand me?" Victoria did not speak. "Good. Here is the question. Did you kill my father?" Victoria Castellano did not answer. She sat on the velvet sofa with her hands folded in her lap, and she looked up at Owen with those clear blue eyes, and for a long moment the only sound in the room was the ticking of the clock on the mantel. Victoria. Owen, my love. You are not well. You are confused. Whatever these people have told you. Did you kill my father, darling, and did you kill my father? The third time his voice broke on the last word, and Stella, watching from 6 feet away, understood something she had not understood before. Owen Castellano had already known. Not with proof, not with certainty, but somewhere inside him, in a place he had refused to look at for 18 months, he had already known. Victoria saw it. Victoria, who had been reading that man's face since he was a boy of 16, saw it the moment he asked the question the third time, and her own face shifted. Not a lot, just a hair, just the smallest tightening around the mouth, the smallest lift of the chin. Owen, she said, and her voice was different now, lower, harder. Your father was a dying man. He had been dying for years. His heart was failing. His lungs were failing. I sat by his bed for 6 months, Owen. 6 months. While you were out in the streets building your little empire, while you were making deals and killing men and pretending you were a king. I was the one who held his hand when he could not breathe. I was the one who changed his bedpan. I was the one who listened to him cry at 3 o'clock in the morning, asking why God would not let him die. Victoria. So yes, Owen, yes, I helped him. The room went still. Stella stopped breathing. Dom's hand had moved very slightly toward the inside of his jacket. He was not trying to hide it. You helped him. I loved him, and I could not watch him suffer anymore. Your father asked me, Owen. He asked me. He said, Victoria, I cannot do this. Please, help me. And I gave him what he asked for. You're lying. I'm not lying. You're lying. Owen's voice was shaking now. Because if what you say is true, you would have told me. You would have told me the day he died. You would have sat me down in this very room and you would have said, Owen, your father asked me to help him go, and I did. And I would have held you and I would have wept with you and we would have buried him together. But that is not what happened. What happened is that you told me he died in his sleep. You told me it was peaceful. You told me his heart simply stopped. And for 18 months, I have been walking around this city believing that. For 18 months, I have been telling my men, my friends, my enemies, that the old man went out like a candle, and you let me. I was protecting you, Owen. From what? From the truth. From the truth or from the fact that you were already planning to do the same thing to me? Victoria did not answer. Owen walked to the small table beside the sofa. On it sat a crystal decanter of brandy. He picked up the decanter. He walked back. He set it down on the low table in front of her. Pour yourself a drink, Victoria. Owen, I said pour yourself a drink. I don't want pour. His voice filled the room like a gunshot. Victoria flinched. Her hand went out. She picked up the decanter. She poured 2 fingers of brandy into the small crystal glass beside it. Her hand was shaking. The neck of the decanter rattled against the rim of the glass. Now drink it. She drank it. In one swallow. Again. She poured again. She drank again. Now look at me and tell me the truth, and I will know if you are lying, Victoria. I have always known when you are lying. I just never wanted to admit it to myself. How long have you been planning this? Victoria set the glass down on the table. She looked at him. And in that moment, something in her face changed. Something in the shape of her eyes, in the set of her mouth, in the whole architecture of her beautiful and poisonous face. The mask came off, and what Stella Monroe saw underneath it was something she had never in her life seen on a human being. It was cold. It was clean. It was the face of a woman who had stopped pretending. 3 years, Victoria said. Owen did not move. 3 years, Owen. Since the night of your father's 60th birthday party, when he stood in that ballroom downstairs and introduced you to half of Chicago as his only heir. His only heir. As if I had not spent the last 15 years of my life in this house. As if I had not raised you alongside him, and as if I was a piece of furniture that he had brought in from one of his other properties. I stood there, Owen, in my diamonds, in my gown, and I smiled, and I clapped, and I went to bed that night, and I decided that when the old man was gone, this family was going to be mine. Victoria, you never saw me, Owen. None of you did. Your father looked at me, and he saw a pretty wife. You looked at me, and you saw a replacement mother. My stepdaughter looked at me, and she saw a woman trying to steal her inheritance. None of you ever saw me. I was not a person to any of you. I was a role, and I got tired of being a role. So you poisoned us. I restored the balance. Victoria, you are listening to yourself. Do you hear yourself? I hear myself perfectly. You killed my father. I ended his suffering 2 months before nature would have done it anyway, and I would have ended yours the same way. Stella put a hand over her mouth. Owen took one step toward his stepmother. And the strangest thing happened. Victoria, looking up at him, smiled the way a woman smiles when she has already accepted what is coming. Go on, Owen. Do it. You have wanted to do it since the moment you walked in here. Your men are watching. Your maid is watching. Your Sicilian is watching. Pull out a gun. Put it to my head. Show them all what a man you are. Owen did not move. Dom. Yes, Mr. Castellano. Go downstairs. Tell Anthony to bring the car around. We are taking her to the warehouse on Kinsey. No, the word came out of Stella's mouth before she knew she had spoken. Every head in the room turned. Owen, Dom, Victoria, all three of them looking at her at once. Stella felt the blood rush to her face, but she did not step back. She did not lower her eyes. She had come this far. She was not going to stop now. Mr. Castellano, please, do not do this. Excuse me, sir, if you take her to that warehouse, you become what she is. And if you become what she is, then what was any of this for? What did I risk my life for if you are only going to do exactly what she did? Owen stared at her. You are telling me what to do with my own stepmother. I am telling you, sir, that there is a right way to do this, and there is a wrong way, and I did not save your life so that you could do it the wrong way. The silence that fell after she said it was the kind of silence that has weight. Stella could feel it pressing on her chest. She could feel her own pulse in her ears. She could feel Dom's eyes on her, and for one instant, she thought he was going to reach out and pull her behind him out of the line of whatever Owen was about to do. Owen did not move. He looked at her for a long, long time, and then slowly the muscle in his jaw relaxed. Just a little, just enough. What is the right way, Estella? Sir, you said there is a right way. Tell me what it is. Stella swallowed. Sir, she killed your father, sir. Has been killing you. If you shoot her in a warehouse or you strangle her or you do whatever it is men like you do, she wins. She wins, sir. Because then you become the man who murdered his own stepmother and she takes you down with her. But if you let the law have if you let the world see what she is, then she goes to prison. She rots. Every day of the rest of her life, she wakes up in a cage and she knows that the woman she tried to kill the family of is walking around free. That is a worse punishment, sir. That is a worse punishment than a bullet. The law! Victoria laughed. The sound was sharp and brittle. You cannot take me to the law, Owen. You and I both know that, and half the police in this city are on your payroll. They will not touch me because touching me means opening everything in this house. Every book, every ledger, every body you have ever buried. They will not touch me because they cannot touch me without touching you. That's true, Mr. Castellano, Dom said quietly. Owen looked at the floor. For one moment, Stella thought she had lost him. For one moment, she thought he was going to nod at Dom, and Dom was going to take Victoria out the back door, and Stella was going to spend the rest of her life knowing she had watched a woman walk out to her death. But then Owen lifted his head, and something in his eyes had changed. Dr. Webb. Victoria's face went white. Dom, where is Marcus Webb right now? He finished with you at the office at 3:30, Mr. Castellano. He should be at his clinic on Dearborn. Get him, now, quietly. Bring him here. Don't tell him why. Tell him I had an attack. Yes, sir. And Dom. Yes, sir. When he gets here, you and two of the boys are going to explain to Dr. Webb exactly what his options are. Option 1, he writes a full signed notarized confession. Names, dates, dosages, who paid him, who told him to do what. In exchange, he keeps his daughter in school at Northwestern, and his wife never finds out. Option 2, we go to Victoria's crew. We find out who she brought in. We find every person in this house she has been paying. And Dr. Webb finds out what happens to men who poison mafia bosses. Yes, Mr. Castellano. He will pick option 1. He will pick option 1, sir. Owen turned back to Victoria. With his signed confession and the pills in this young woman's testimony, I have enough to put you in a cell for the rest of your life without ever bringing a single piece of Castellano business into open court. I have enough to feed the FBI exactly what I want them to have, and nothing more, and they will take it, Victoria, because I am going to make sure they take it. You won't. You can't. Owen, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I am your stepmother. You are my father's killer. You loved me. I did. His voice broke again, and this time he did not try to hide it. God forgive me, Victoria, I did. I loved you like a mother. I sat in this very room 6 months ago and told my lawyer that if anything happened to me, you were to be provided for. I was about to sign a new will. Next week, Victoria, next week, I was going to leave you a house in Florida. I was going to leave you enough money to live the rest of your life without ever having to ask a soul for a dime. You only had to wait. I didn't want the house in Florida, Owen. No, you wanted everything. Yes, her voice was perfectly steady now. I wanted everything. Owen closed his eyes. Dom, take her upstairs, to her rooms. 2 men on the door. She is not to speak to anyone. She is not to make a single telephone call. She is not to open a window. When Marcus is finished writing and when our lawyer has arrived, we will proceed. Yes, sir. Victoria. Yes, Owen. If you so much as look at this young woman in a way I do not like between now and the moment the police take you out of this house, I will forget every single thing this young woman has just said to me. Do you understand? Victoria looked at Stella. Looked at her with those clear, empty, beautiful blue eyes. And Stella, meeting her gaze, felt something in her chest that was not fear. It was something older and steadier than fear. It was the thing that had made her walk into the kitchen that morning and pick up the stock pot. It was the thing that had made her go down to the security station and tell Dom Santoro the truth. It was her mother. It was Mrs. Castellano, Stella said softly. My mother used to say that there are 2 kinds of people in the world. The kind who burn other people to warm themselves, and the kind who would rather be cold. Victoria stared at her. You don't know what cold is, little girl. I know exactly what cold it is, ma'am. I just don't mind it. Not if the alternative is being you. Victoria's mouth opened. For the first time in the whole terrible afternoon, she had nothing to say. Dom stepped forward. He took Victoria gently by the arm. She did not resist. He walked her across the room past Stella, past Owen, and out the door of the sitting room. Stella heard his footsteps in the hallway and the footsteps of the men who had already somehow silently appeared to take her upstairs. And then the footsteps were gone, and the door clicked shut, and Stella Monroe was alone in the sitting room with Owen Castellano. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Owen walked slowly to the velvet sofa. He sat down on the edge of it. He put his elbows on his knees and he put his face in his hands, and he did not make a sound. But his shoulders moved, just a little. Just enough for Stella to understand that the most feared man in Chicago was crying in front of her. She did not know what to do. She did not know if she should speak. She did not know if she should leave. She stayed where she was. After a long while, he lifted his head. His eyes were red. Stella. Yes, sir. Come here, please. She walked across the room. She stopped 3 feet from him. Closer? She stepped closer. Sit down. Sir, I don't think... Sit down, Stella, please. I am asking you as a man, not as your employer. She sat down on the edge of the sofa as far from him as she could be and still be on the same piece of furniture. He looked at her. I want you to understand something. Are you listening? Yes, sir. For 18 months, I have walked around this city as a man who does not need anyone. I killed rivals. I closed deals. I built an empire on the back of a dead man, and I told myself I did not need to love anyone because loving people is what gets a man killed in my business. I told myself that the only person who loved me in this world was the woman who just walked out of this room, and that was enough because she was family. Do you hear me? Yes, sir. And this afternoon, a girl I have spoken to, exactly twice a girl whose name I did not even know a month ago, walked into the security station of my own house and handed Dom Santoro 23 pills of digitalis and told him that my stepmother was killing me. And she did that knowing that if Dom did not believe her, he would have her killed in that room. And if Dom did believe her, there was still a very good chance my stepmother would get to her first. And she did it anyway. For a man who had never done a single kind thing for her in his life. Stella looked down at her hands. Sir, you don't owe me anything. I did what I did because I am not finished. She closed her mouth. Stella, I am going to ask you a question, and I want you to tell me the truth, whatever the truth is. Yes, sir. What do you want, sir, from me, right now in this moment? Tell me what you want, and if it is in my power to give it to you, I will give it to you. Stella thought for a long moment. I want my brother to be safe, sir. That is all I have ever wanted. I want Danny to be safe, and I want to be able to keep paying for the home where he lives. And I want to be able to walk out of this house tonight and go to sleep in my own bed and know that I am not going to be killed for what I did today. You have all three. Sir, your brother is safe. From this moment on, I will make 2 telephone calls tomorrow morning, and Danny Monroe will have the best doctors and the best care in the state of Illinois for the rest of his natural life, and it will not cost you a single cent. You have a job in this house for as long as you want one, and a pension when you do not. And I give you my word as my father's son that no one in this city, no one will ever lay a hand on you or your brother. Do you understand me? Stella could not speak. Her throat had closed. Do you understand me, Stella? Yes, sir. Good. He stood up. He walked to the sideboard. He poured himself a glass of water from the pitcher. He drank it. He set the glass down. Then he turned back to her. There is one more thing. Sir, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, the FBI is going to walk into this house, and they are going to arrest Victoria Castellano for conspiracy to commit murder. Before that happens, I need you to do one thing for me. One last thing. And if you say no, I will understand and nothing will change about anything I have just promised you. What, sir? I need you to tell your story from the beginning to the man who is about to walk through that door in 30 minutes. His name is Michael Ashford. He is my attorney. He is going to record every word you say, and he is going to turn that recording over to the federal prosecutor tomorrow morning, along with Dr. Webb's confession and the laboratory report. Your name will be in the file, Stella. Your face will be in the newspaper. My stepmother has friends in this city, and some of them will not be happy with you. I will protect you from all of them, but I cannot protect you from the fact that after tomorrow, the whole city of Chicago is going to know who you are. Stella looked at him. She thought of Danny at the group home wheeling himself out into the garden every afternoon to feed the birds. She thought of her mother in the charity ward. She thought of the voice in her head 2 weeks ago in her little room telling her that she did not want to be the kind of person who knew and did nothing. Sir, she said, when your lawyer walks through that door, I am going to tell him every single word from the beginning. Owen Castellano looked at her for a long time. Then he did something Stella had not expected and would not have believed any man in his position was capable of. He bowed his head, just slightly, the way a man bows his head in a church. Thank you, Stella Monroe. Michael Ashford arrived at 7 minutes past 6 that evening carrying a leather briefcase and wearing the face of a man who had been pulled out of a dinner party and told not to ask questions. He was in his late 50s, silver at the temples, with the calm, measured eyes of a man who had seen every terrible thing a wealthy family could do to itself and had learned not to flinch at any of it. Owen met him at the door of the sitting room. They spoke for less than a minute in a low voice Stella could not hear. Then Owen turned and nodded at her. Stella, this is Mr. Ashford. He is going to listen to you now. I will be in the study. When you are finished, Dom will come and find me. Yes, sir. Ashford set his briefcase on the low table. He opened it. He took out a small black recording device. He looked up at Stella and he smiled, and his smile was kind. Miss Monroe, before we begin, I have been Mr. Castellano's attorney for 21 years. Nothing you say in this room will go anywhere I do not send it, and the only place I am sending it is to the office of the United States Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. You are not in any trouble. You are not a suspect. You are a witness, and you are the most important witness this case is ever going to have. Do you understand what the Yes, sir. Then take a breath, take your time, and start at the beginning. Stella took a breath. She started at the beginning. She told him about the silver tray in the library door in the 2 voices. She told him the exact words as best as she could remember them. She told him about Dr. Webb and the blue cabinet and the 23 pills. She told him about the sugar pills from the pharmacy. She told him about the 9 mornings she had delivered tea to Victoria's sitting room with her heart in her throat. She told him about the conversation in Owen's study, about Owen asking her whether she believed his stepmother was a kind woman, and about her own cowardice in that moment when she had said nothing. Ashford never interrupted her once. She talked for an hour and 20 minutes. When she was finished, her voice was nearly gone and her hands were cold, and Ashford reached across the table and gently turned off the recorder. "Miss Monroe," he said, "in 21 years of doing this job, I have never once heard a statement delivered that cleanly. You are a remarkable young woman." "Sir, I am just a maid." "No, Miss Monroe, you stopped being just a maid the moment you put those pills in your apron pocket. Do you know what you are now?" "No, sir." "You are the reason Owen Castellano is alive. Remember that. For the rest of your life, when things are hard, remember that." She nodded. She could not speak. At 9 o'clock the next morning, exactly on time, 2 black sedans pulled up to the front gate of the Castellano estate. 6 agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation got out. They were met at the door by Michael Ashford, who handed the lead agent a sealed envelope containing a sworn affidavit from Dr. Marcus Webb, a laboratory report from Costa Pharmaceutical, and a recorded statement from a witness whose name was being protected for her own safety. Stella was not in the house when it happened. Owen had sent her away the night before in one of his own cars with Dom driving and 2 of his men in a second car behind. They took her to a hotel on Michigan Avenue. They took Danny from the group home in a 3rd car and brought him to her that same night. Stella sat up until 3 in the morning in a suite larger than her whole apartment, holding her little brother's hand while he slept and trying to make herself believe that everything that had just happened was real. It was real. At 11:30 that morning, Victoria Castellano was led out of her bedroom in handcuffs. She did not speak. She did not cry. She did not fight. She walked down the long marble stairs of the house she had tried to make her own, and out through the front door and into the back of a black sedan that took her to the federal courthouse downtown. The newspapers had her photographed by 2 o'clock that afternoon. By 5, the whole city knew. Dr. Marcus Webb surrendered voluntarily at the same hour. His confession notarized and signed named Victoria as the sole architect of the conspiracy. He described the dosages, the delivery schedule, the money that had changed hands, $140,000 wired to an account in the Cayman Islands. He described the conversation he had had with Victoria on the night Stella Monroe had overheard them almost word for word. His testimony and Stella's matched so exactly that the federal prosecutor, a woman named Elena Delgado, told Michael Ashford it was the cleanest case she had seen in her career. Victoria was denied bail. She was held at the Metropolitan Correctional Center downtown in a single cell on the women's floor to await trial. And on the 3rd morning after her arrest, Stella Monroe, still in the hotel suite on Michigan Avenue, received a visitor. It was Mrs. Halloran. The head housekeeper walked into the suite wearing her good wool coat, her gray hair tucked under a small black hat, and she stood in the doorway with her hands folded in front of her, and she looked at Stella for a long moment before she spoke. "Girl, Mrs. Halloran, I have come to say 2 things to you. May I sit down?" "Yes, ma'am, of course." The older woman sat down. She took off her hat. She set it on her lap. "The first thing I have come to say is that I am sorry. I knew Stella. I did not know everything. I did not know about the pills, but I knew that woman was not what she pretended to be. I had known for years, and I was too afraid to say a word. I looked the other way, child. I looked the other way for 15 years, and a 23-year-old girl who had been in that house for 11 months did what I did not have the courage to do in 15. I will carry that shame to my grave." "Mrs. Halloran, let me finish." Stella nodded. "The second thing is this. Mr. Castellano has asked me to stay on as head of household for as long as I wish to work, and he has asked me to ask you whether you will come back to the house, not as a maid, as my successor, as the woman who will be head of household when I retire, which I intend to do in 2 years at the age of 68. He wants you trained. He wants you ready. He says, and these are his exact words, Mrs. Halloran, there is no one in this city I trust more than that girl, and I will not have her scrubbing floors for a living while she has the kind of head on her shoulders that she has. That is what he said." Stella stared at her. "Mrs. Halloran, I do not have the training. I do not have the experience. I cannot run a house like that." "You cannot yet. That is why there are 2 years. I will teach you everything I know, every supplier, every account, every member of the staff. You will be ready, Stella. I have watched you for 11 months. I know what you are. You will be more than ready." Stella looked down at her hands. and Danny. Mr. Castellano says he has already made the arrangements. The best facility in the state, private, staffed 24 hours. He says you may visit your brother any day of the week. He says he will send a car. Stella did not cry. She had done all her crying. She simply sat in her chair and she looked at the woman who had once told her on her first day that she must see nothing, hear nothing, know nothing, and she felt something move in her chest that she had not felt in a very long time. It was not happiness. It was something older and quieter. It was the feeling of having made it through. Mrs. Halloran, I would be honored. The older woman reached across the table. She took Stella's hand. Her grip was strong and warm and steady. Good girl. Now come home. Boy. The trial began in the spring. It lasted 6 weeks. The prosecution called 41 witnesses. Dr. Marcus Webb testified for 3 full days, and on every day of those 3 days, Victoria Castellano sat at the defense table in a navy blue suit and looked at him with a face as empty as a stone. When it was Stella's turn, she walked into the courtroom on a Tuesday morning wearing a gray dress and a thin gold cross around her neck that had belonged to her mother, and she took the oath and she told the jury exactly what she had told Michael Ashford in the sitting room that night. Her testimony took 4 hours. The defense attorney tried for 2 of those 4 hours to break her. He suggested she was lying. He suggested she had been paid. He suggested she had her own motive to destroy Victoria Castellano. She answered every question the same way she had answered Owen that night in the study. I did not want to be the kind of person who knew and did nothing. On the 39th day of trial, the jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, the foreman was a heavy-set black man from the South Side who had been for most of the trial the hardest of the 12 to read. He stood up. He read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder. Attempted murder in the first degree. Solicitation of a licensed physician to commit a capital offense. Murder in the first degree in the death of Salvatore Castellano. Victoria was sentenced 2 weeks later to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She did not look at Owen when the sentence was read. She did not look at Stella. She looked straight ahead at the judge with the same clean, empty face she had worn through every day of the trial, and when the bailiffs came to take her, she stood up without resistance, and she walked out of the courtroom and out of the story and out of Owen Castellano's life forever. There was one more thing. One thing that Stella had not been expecting. 3 nights after the sentencing, Owen asked her to come to the study. She had been back in the house for 3 months by then. She was already learning slowly, patiently under Mrs. Halloran's watchful eye the ways of running the household. She had her own room now, larger than her old one, on the 2nd floor of the East Wing. She had a telephone. She had a bank account with more money in it than she had ever seen in her life. And every Saturday afternoon, a black car came to the front gate, and it took her across the city to the facility where Danny lived, and she spent 4 hours with him in a garden that had rose bushes and a fountain and a cat named Biscuit who liked to sit in Danny's lap. She had not been alone with Owen Castellano since the night in the sitting room. When she walked into the study that evening, he was sitting behind the same leather chair where his father had died. He looked different than he had looked then. His color had come back. His hands did not tremble anymore. He had put on weight. He looked for the first time since she had met him like a man who was not dying. Stella, thank you for coming. Please, sit down. She sat. I want to ask you something, and I want you to understand that there is no wrong answer. I want you to understand that whatever you say, it will not change a single thing I have already promised you. Your job, your brother, your safety. All of those are yours always. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Good. He folded his hands on the desk. Stella, in the 4 months since all of this happened, I have thought about you every single day. I have thought about a young woman who owed me nothing, who had every reason in the world to walk away, who could have gone to her quarters that night and put a pillow over her head and let me die in 3 weeks the way my father died, and who did not, who instead stood in front of a woman she knew was a murderer and lied to her face, who walked into the security station of a Mafia house and told my head of security that his boss was being poisoned, knowing that if he did not believe her, she would not walk out of that station alive. Sir, I am not finished. Yes, sir. I have known a great many women in my life, Stella Monroe. I have known women in silk and women in pearls and women in the very best of everything this city has to offer. I have not in 36 years on this earth met one single one of them who has the thing that you have. Do you know what that thing is? No, sir. Neither do I. I only know that I would like to spend the rest of my life trying to find out what it is called. Stella looked at him. For a moment, she could not breathe. Sir, I am a maid. You were a maid. You are the head of my household now. And in 2 years, you will be a great deal more than that, if you wish to be. Sir, I do not know what you are saying to me. I am saying, Stella, that I am not going to pretend what I feel. I am not going to pretend what I have felt every single time I have seen you in the hallway of this house for the last 4 months. I am a man who has been lied to enough in his life. I do not want to lie anymore. Not to myself, not to the people I care about, not to you, sir. But I am also saying that I understand exactly what I am and what my life is and what it would mean to be a woman who stood beside a man like me. I am saying that I would rather you tell me right now to my face that I am a fool and that you want only to do your job in peace than have you say anything else out of gratitude or out of fear or out of a feeling that you owe me something. You do not owe me anything, Stella. You saved my life. That debt is mine, forever. Stella looked at him for a long time. She thought of her mother dying in the charity ward. She thought of the silver tray outside the library door. She thought of the blue cabinet and the 23 pills and the long walk down the hallway with her apron full of poison. She thought of Victoria's face looking up at her in the sitting room. You don't know what cold is, little girl. She thought of Owen bowing his head like a man in a church. Thank you, Stella Monroe. And she thought of the last 11 months walking the halls of that house, and of the morning when she had served Victoria her tea and known she was serving a murderer, and of every single day since then, and of the woman she had been when she walked into that house and the woman she was now. They were not the same woman. Sir, she said, and her voice was steady, I need time. Owen nodded. He nodded immediately. You have time, all the time you need, a week, a year, 10 years. I am not going anywhere, Stella, and neither is this job, and neither is the promise I made you. You have nothing to fear from me and nothing to gain by telling me anything other than the truth. That is all I am asking for. The truth whenever you know what it is. Stella stood up. Thank you, sir. You are welcome, Stella. She walked to the door. She stopped with her hand on the knob. She turned. Sir, there is one thing I want to say now before I go. Anything. I did not do it because I knew you. I did not do it because I cared about you. I did not do it for love or for loyalty or for any of the reasons I think you might be giving yourself at night. I did it because a woman was murdering a man in his own house and I could stop it, and so I did. That is all. That is who I am. I am not the hero in your story, sir. I am just a woman who could not walk away. Owen looked at her. Stella. Sir, that is exactly the woman I am talking about. She walked out of the study. She walked down the long hallway. She walked past the library where the door was closed now and would be kept closed and would never, as long as she lived in that house, be left ajar in the middle of the night. She walked up the stairs to her room and she sat on the edge of her bed and she looked out the window at the lights of Chicago. And for the first time in her life, Stella Monroe understood what her mother had meant all those years ago, lying in the charity ward and holding Stella's hand with fingers that had gone cold. Her mother had said, baby, I don't want to leave you, but I am not afraid, because I raised a girl who is not afraid either. And in this world, baby, the only thing that matters is whether you are afraid. Everything else is just noise. Stella had been afraid in the beginning. She was not afraid anymore. It was not Victoria she had defeated in that sitting room. It was not Dr. Webb. It was not the 23 pills or the $140,000 or the long, careful architecture of a murder 18 months in the making. It was something older than any of that. It was the voice in her own head, the one that had told her over and over that she was just a maid, that she should see nothing, hear nothing, know nothing, that she should keep her head down and her mouth shut and walk away from a dying man, because walking away was the smart thing to do. She had killed that voice, and the woman who had killed it was not going to walk away from anything ever again for the rest of her life. Whether she one day walked instead into the study of Owen Castellano and gave him a different answer than the one she had given him tonight, that was a question for another day. A question she would answer in her own time, in her own way, in her own voice. For tonight it was enough that she was alive. For tonight it was enough that Danny was safe. For tonight, it was enough that a woman who had burned other people to warm herself was sitting in a cell in the Metropolitan Correctional Center and would sit there every single day of every single year for the rest of her natural life, and would die there alone knowing that the girl she had tried to destroy was walking the halls of the house she had tried to steal and was not afraid. Stella Monroe turned out the light. She laid her head on the pillow. She closed her eyes. And she slept the clean, deep sleep of a woman who had learned at 23 years old the thing it takes most people a whole lifetime to learn, and most people never learn at all. She had learned that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is doing the right thing when every voice in your head and every voice in the world is telling you to walk away. She had done the right thing. She had saved a man's life. She had brought a killer to justice. She had kept her brother safe. And from this night forward, no one in the city of Chicago, no one in the world was ever going to tell Stella Monroe that she was just a maid again. She never was. She never had been. And she never would be.